this is your Daily 5 for Tuesday, April 28th, 2026. For the second movie this week for our commentary series under the heading April Sleaze, Lando and I watched a 1993 film that has two titles. The original Italian title is Red Lies, or I think it's Bugie Rosse would be how you pronounce it. Not that I'm doing it very well. But it's more commonly listed, if you're going to look for it, under The Final Scoop. That's the American version, which is actually a case where I think both titles actually work fairly well for the movie. That's not something I can often say, but in this case, I think it applies. This movie was a bit of an unusual one because, and this is a byproduct of the amount of these movies that Lando and I have watched, and certainly I've watched, and Lando too at this point, is we have gotten into a routine where when there is a murder mystery in one of these Italian films, we tend to start to figure out or hypothesize who the killer is, partially based on what the outlandish explanation might be. And that is something that's going to happen if you watch enough of these movies, because in a lot of them, there is a resolution and an explanation for the killer that can veer into, I don't know if camp is necessarily the correct term for it, but they can have their little idiosyncrasies in the way that some of the explanations can be a little bit a stretch of the suspension of disbelief at times. And so we've just gotten used to, okay, when we get to the end of this movie, there's going to be a very tangled up, Nothing Underneath is a perfect example. Or Delirium, really, although Delirium did it worse. Nothing Underneath, that explanation, it makes sense, but it's also a little out there. And many Italian slashers, when you get to the explanation, are, oh, okay, well, that's kind of neat, but it's a little out there. In terms of The Final Scoop, the interesting part is the explanation is fairly straightforward. It is a reasonably, I don't want to say normal, but conventional, better word, a reasonably conventional murder mystery in how it resolves. In that this could easily, and I'm not kidding when I say this could have been the plot of a Law and Order episode, more or less. Obviously, the embellishments of the giallo genre are there, and some of these things would never have been shown on television that are going to be in the film. But if you imagine a slightly sanitized version of this, you could see this being a Law and Order episode fairly easily, or CSI or something like that. And so we were overthinking what the explanation was going to be. We were kind of jumping around, trying to come up with, again, slightly outlandish explanations why certain people might be the killer. And then once it got to the end and the explanation was given, we both went, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And that's not a negative. I'm saying that as if it was a letdown. It really was not. It's just more of on us that we are over-engineering explanations to things, because so many of these movies have, again, not something that's illogical, but it's almost that there's a logical reason that a killer's doing something with just this nice little sprinkling of, oh, well, that just pushes it a little over the top then. And that's a lot of these films. Whereas this one was, when we got to the end, it was, no, this is why this person did it. They felt they were driven to do this, and that's all there is to it. It's a reasonable motive for somebody to do what they have done. Now, I will say the movie does throw a couple of out of left field red herrings, including one at the very end, that feel like they are somewhat cheap attempts to derail what you might be thinking. But outside of that, and those aren't really complaints, a lot of the Italian movies do that. In this one, though, it stands out more because the explanation was a fairly traditional one. And so you notice a little bit more. But overall, we both really liked the movie. It was different. It definitely upped the sleaze factor from the first movie this week. So they definitely delivered that. There is a definite element. A lot of people compared it as the Italian version of Cruising. I think there's something to that. Certainly, you can see some overlap there. What is portrayed as a deviant sexual underground is a major theme, so you are going to delve into those waters. And there are some interesting characters that pop up throughout the movie, including one hiding in the bushes very early on, who I really was charmed every time he showed up because he's so exaggerated. But overall, we both really liked the movie. I actually think Lando said he might not watch it again. I think I will, now that I know that the explanation isn't all that unconventional. I think watching it again, knowing what the explanation is, might actually make the movie better for me. But I would definitely recommend it. Again, 1993, The Final Scoop, an interesting and more conventional entry in the Italian giallo genre. Later.